If you've ever spent time on the internet, you've seen one of those videos where people put a cucumber next to a cat and it freaks the cat out and the cat jumps up in the air. That's a perfect example of evolution passing us down stuff. Those cats have ancestors that were afraid of snakes. And since their ancestors were afraid of snakes, they were able to live and reproduce and then make a new cat that made a new cat that was also afraid of snakes. So that became an inherited trait for cats. So that even a cat that has never seen a snake before is still triggered by a cucumber. And that's because that's hardwired into that cat's brain. The cucumber resembles a snake and scares the crap out of it. And even kids who've never seen a snake before have a natural fear of snakes. Around the age of 2.5 to 3 years old, that starts to become something that they're afraid of. And that's not something they're taught. So we have a lot of stuff in our brain that's passed down. So in persuasion and influence, there are 3 critical things, and only 3, that you will ever leverage on another person or on yourself to change your own behaviors. And that is electricity, chemicals, and genetics. So I'm either leveraging electricity, which means I'm directing a person's thought process to think a different way. I'm leveraging chemicals, which means I'm making a person feel certain emotional conditions or emotional states where I need them to be. And finally, genetics. I know the exact genetic triggers that make a person more compliant, more obedient, more suggestible, more open, more willing to connect with other people. And I know how to trigger those behaviors based on a person's genes. And that's the most powerful. When we get to the point of genes, that's where persuasion really takes off. It took me about 20 years to figure that out. So genes are very powerful. And I want to leave you with this one quote. Good persuasion works because our ancestors needed to live. So let's talk about these genes really quick. Right here, you're going to see a model called the fate model. Our ancestors thrived on survival, and they were very worried that they would be outcast from a tribe, eaten by a tiger, bitten by a snake, eating a poisonous berry, getting bitten by an insect. Those were life-threatening conditions for us a long time ago. So fate is an illustration of what persuades people in real life from a genetics perspective. So the first letter in fate is F, which stands for focus. Without focus, the person back long ago, if you think about Amy, without focus, she would not have survived. So even if she was deeply involved in a conversation with someone, if something appeared to be a threat or appeared to be incredibly valuable to her, her focus would shift towards that object or towards that interaction. And that's important because it made Amy survive. A stands for authority. Authority is vitally important to all of us, even today. And that helped Amy survive. In this tribal environment where Amy lived, if she disobeyed the tribal leader, or the tribal leader had a vice president, so to speak, that issued out an order from a position of authority, and even if it's not authority, as long as it's perceived as authority by the brain, the person becomes automatically compliant. Amy, if she disobeyed, would be outcast from the entire tribe. And that was a threat to survival. The T in fate stands for tribe. Amy's focus on who's around her, and ours even today, our focus on our social environment is very important. One of the reasons is if you ever see a group of deer grazing in a field, not every one of them can look in every direction. So they work as a team. If one deer hears something, his head pops up. If he thinks that there's a potential threat, he makes a quick sound, and the entire tribe of deer can exit as fast as possible. So we do the same thing. We pay attention to our environment. Even if you're in the middle of a restaurant and you don't know anybody in the room, our brains are scanning for environmental threats or environmental value, social value from another person. That is critically important to understand, that tribe plays an important role. We talked about authority being an instantaneous obedience trigger for human beings, but the group as a whole can also do the same. And we're going to learn really deeply about this in just a few modules. The E in tribe stands for emotion. If something produces a strong emotion in our ancestors from a survival standpoint, then it's passed down to us because it helped them survive. But even to us, we have ways that we're forming these things in our life. And if we're touching a hot stove as a kid, that creates a strong, powerful emotion. It creates a pain sensation in our body and says, do not do that again. So anything that produced an emotion in our ancestors that helped them live gets passed down. And the cool thing about all of this is it resides so low in the brain that we can't really access it. There's no admin control panel where we can go in there and shut any of these programs off. They're always running in the background. The cool thing about leveraging this is that you get to see how these things work. In a few modules later, we're going to really explore this, and I'm going to show you how just obeying a crowd of people can literally get you killed, or how a person just wearing a lab coat can talk most people into murdering another person, a total stranger, in less than an hour.